All right, kind of a two-pronged. On to the next issue that's tied in with pension. A recent report estimates that within 35 years, retired public employees' health care benefit costs will exceed the amount of the entire state budget. The pension reform bill did not address retiree health care. What does the state need to do to stave off this second crisis?
Well, we need help. And some of that comes particularly in controlling costs for health care. We obviously have a demographic of which I'm a part of, the baby boom generation. That is, that demographic gets close to retirement. It challenges and is part of our economy for better and worse in every form and fashion. So as more people move into retirement and as life expectancy hopefully continues to grow, healthcare costs have to be managed, and we have to have more control over healthcare costs. And having said that, we still have to address the reality, the fiscal reality, that we can't pay for all of this and still have robust services for the existing workforce. So we have to go out and negotiate many of these things, but we also have to have control on the costs, just like private employees do, for not just their retirement obligations, but for their current employees. So both parts are very important. Actually, in many local governments, they've addressed it. They've begun to seriously address their unfunded liability when it comes to retiree health care costs. Actually, in Contra Costa County, they've eliminated a very large chunk of their unfunded liability after I left for retiree health care costs. We've done the same for new employees, for state employees. They're limited in terms of where they can go for their health care costs as current employees and as retirees. So all of these things we didn't get into easily or overnight. We had unrealistic expectations, but on the healthcare side, America has a real crisis overall. Of all the industrialized countries, we have the largest healthcare costs as a percentage of our GDP. It's almost 20%, whereas most of our industrial competitors are down around 9%. So we have to control costs. That's one of the most important things that the U.S. government, the state government, has to do. Most of that will be effectuated at the federal level.
This is a big topic. It's one that is probably near and dear to a lot of people in this room. What is going to happen with healthcare? Why have our healthcare prices escalated? What can or what should we do on a state and a local level to rectify the situation? What's going to happen on the national level? There is a lot of questions. As a attorney in the trial field, I think my profession has a lot to blame as to the escalating cost of healthcare, because there used to be all these charitable hospitals in this country, but due to malpractice insurance, due to lawsuits, doctors stopped being willing to donate 1 day a week at charitable hospitals. There's a problem. There's a huge problem that I don't know that there is a magic wand that can just be waved, but it is a problem that has to be taken care of. And one of the biggest problems is the unpreparedness of our cities, our counties, and our state to handle the issue, and that they're not even setting aside the money right now for their future liabilities. And that is where we need to first take care of the problem, is stop having this unfunded liability and start paying the bills as they come due, and start making sure the money is set aside, because it does us no good to actually make promises that you're going to have this health care if we can't afford to pay it. One of the things is in automobile insurance, you insure that which you cannot afford, and we do so much insuring of that bottom dollar, and we need to start considering that.
All right, turning to education. Education is obviously a big issue in the state of California. A large portion of our budget, by constitutional amendment, is required to be spent on education in the state. What would you do to solve the K-12 funding issue that the state is seeing?
Education is a very important issue. In 1970, we had the 8th best educated workforce. In 2008, we were the worst educated workforce in the nation. Education is important because it is giving our kids a step into their future. One of the problems that we have in California is that Sacramento is spending so much time dictating to the school boards how they have to run the school boards. When my grandmother and my mother were teachers, there was a principal, a vice principal, a secretary, and not much other administration. But over the last 40 years, we have put so many burdens upon our school districts that now only 25% of the money we spend on education actually goes to teacher salaries. We have so much administration, so much regulation upon our schools and our teachers, what they must teach, what they must do. I was talking to a Danville high school teacher, and he says that they don't even have enough time to teach the United States Constitution, and he's a civics teacher. We need to get Sacramento out of the school districts. We got some great school boards. They need to do what they need to do. We need to release the regulations on them and allow them to succeed. We need to release the regulations on our teachers, allow them to do what they do best, and that is teach.
There was another Stanford study. There aren't too many Cal people here. We were citing 2 Stanford studies there. There was another Stanford study that was actually done in the previous governor's administration that was supported by all the Democrats and the Republicans. And that study came back and said there were 2 things we needed to do to improve education in California. We needed to put more money into it, no surprise, and we couldn't continue to operate it the way we currently do. The 25% number is a new one to me, so I don't know where that comes from. Most of our overhead goes for wages and benefits in the classroom. The initiatives on the ballot 30 and 38 further address this in trying to raise more revenue for schools. In the 70s, we spent more per capita and per student, so we got better results. I agree with my opponent. We've got to let the local districts do more, and I voted for more flexibility for local districts in the legislature. But on the other hand, we hear a lot of people talking about more accountability for local districts, so there's a balancing act there. And then lastly, I think we have to remember that we have a situation, sort of a Dickens situation in California where everybody struggles, but if you're from more affluent communities, the test scores are much better. If you track the test scores in this county and Alameda County, they tracked almost exactly what the social income, what the income area is. In the 1970s, the U.S. Congress did a study called the Jenkins Report that said that 60 to 70% of educational outcomes came from socioeconomic impacts, particularly in poorer communities, and that's where we spend a lot of money. So we're in a world where it's very different from where I grew up, where you had one income in the household and mom stayed home. In most communities now, we have 2 incomes, and that's benefited our economy, but we have to put more money into making sure kids are prepared for school in kindergarten and have more preschool and after-school programs. We're trying to do that on very little money with a very different social model.